It stopped because of her voice, and no one in that city would ever be the same again. The wind cut through the narrow street like a blade, carrying the distant hum of luxury engines, and whispered fear. Lily Carter pulled her thin jacket tighter, though it barely helped. The cold had long since settled into her bones. 3 days, without a real meal. Her hands trembled not from fear, but from exhaustion, the kind that made everything feel distant, like the world was happening behind glass. She shouldn't have been there. Everyone knew this block belonged to people who didn't tolerate strangers, let alone someone like her. Worn shoes, cracked fabric, hollow eyes. But hunger didn't care about boundaries, and neither did desperation. She took one step forward, then another, ignoring the looks, the subtle shifts of distance, the way people avoided even brushing past her, like she carried something contagious. Then the sound came, low, heavy, deliberate, a growl that didn't belong in any normal world. Conversations died instantly. Heels stopped mid-step. Someone dropped a bag and didn't even pick it up. Lily froze. She didn't need to turn around to know what it was. Everyone knew the stories. Everyone feared the same thing. Inwax, the king's guard dog. Not just an animal, something else, something trained to obey only one master, something that had never once hesitated. Lily turned slowly, her breath catching in her throat. The creature stood nearly 4 feet tall at the shoulder, its dark coat absorbing the streetlight, eyes glowing faintly like embers buried under ash. It didn't rush, it didn't bark, it simply watched her. And that was worse. People backed away fast. Now 5 feet, 10 feet, 20. No one would get between her and that thing. Not here, not ever. Lily's mind screamed run, but her legs didn't move, not because she was brave, because she was too tired, too empty to react. The dog stepped forward, one heavy paw at a time, the distance closing. 10 feet, 8, 6. Every instinct in her body collapsed into silence. And then something strange happened, not outside, but inside. A memory that wasn't quite a memory, a word forming at the edge of her mind, unfamiliar, yet certain, like a song she had never learned, but somehow knew the meaning of. Her lips parted before she could think, before fear could catch up, and she whispered, "Stay." The word barely existed in the air, fragile, quiet, completely ordinary. And yet everything changed. Nyx stopped, not slowed, not hesitated, stopped mid-step, like time itself had locked around him, one paw suspended inches above the ground, muscles frozen. The street fell into absolute silence. No cars, no footsteps, no breath. Lily blinked, confused, her own voice echoing in her head as if it didn't belong to her. The dog's eyes shifted, not with aggression, not with restraint, something deeper, something that made her chest tighten. Then slowly, impossibly, the massive creature lowered itself down, its head bowing toward her, not submission born from training, something older, something that recognized her before she understood herself. A sharp click echoed behind her, shoes striking pavement, measured, controlled. Lily didn't need to look to feel the change in the air, colder, heavier, like the night itself was holding its breath. He had arrived. Lucien Voss. Every story, every warning, every whispered rumor condensed into one presence that now stood just behind her. She felt it before she saw him, the weight of attention, ancient, precise, terrifying. And when he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost calm, but it carried something that made the world feel smaller. "What did you just say?" Lily swallowed, her throat dry. "I don't know," she admitted, and for the first time since the moment began, she turned to face him, pale skin flawless like carved marble, eyes that didn't just look at her but through her, searching, measuring, deciding. And somewhere deep beneath her skin something flickered, faint and warm, like a mark waking up from a very long sleep. Lucien did not blink, not even once. His gaze remained fixed on her, like she was something that should not exist, and yet undeniably did, the kind of contradiction that unsettled even the oldest instincts in the room. Lily felt it in the way the air pressed tighter against her lungs, in the way the distant city noise seemed to vanish, as if the world itself refused to interrupt this moment. Nyx stayed lowered beside her, unmoving, not tense, not restrained, simply still, as if waiting for something only Lily could give. Lucien stepped closer, one measured step, then another. His shoes made no sound against the pavement, but each movement carried weight, the kind that made people step back without being told. His presence alone parted the space around him, leaving Lily standing in the center of something she did not understand. "You spoke a command," he said quietly, his voice controlled, but threaded with something sharper, not anger, not curiosity, something deeper, something that had been waiting a very long time. Lily shook her head instinctively. "I did not. I said a word." She swallowed, her throat dry. It felt normal. Lucien's eyes flickered, not with disbelief, but recognition. "That word has not Been used in this city in over 3 centuries, he said, the statement landing heavier than any accusation. Lily frowned, confused. 3 centuries? That was not possible. None of this was possible. I think you are mistaken, she said softly, her voice almost lost in the stillness. I do not know anything about commands, or whatever you think I did. Wax shifted slightly beside her, not rising, just enough movement to draw every guard's attention. Hands hovered near concealed weapons, but no one acted, no one dared. Lucien raised one hand just slightly, and the tension froze instantly. Even the guards obeyed that small gesture. Without question, his focus never left Lily. Tell me exactly what you remember, he said. Lily hesitated, her mind racing. But there was nothing clear, no memory of learning, no moment that explained what had just happened, just that strange echo in her head, that word forming like it had always been there, waiting. I was just standing there, she said slowly. He was coming toward me, and I felt something like I knew what to say, but I did not think about it. It just happened. Lucien studied her in silence. Seconds stretched long enough to feel uncomfortable, then longer still, until it felt like time itself was being measured against her heartbeat. And then he spoke again, softer this time, almost to himself, not trained, not aware. Lily caught that, and her confusion deepened. What does that mean, she asked, but he did not answer her directly. Instead, his gaze dropped briefly to her hands, to the faint tremors still present from cold and exhaustion, then to the subtle flicker beneath her skin, that glow barely visible, but unmistakable now that he had seen it. Something ancient responding to something older. Nyx lifted his head slightly, eyes shifting between them, not restless, not aggressive, but alert, as if listening to something deeper than sound. Lucien exhaled slowly, the motion controlled, deliberate. Then he looked back at her fully. You should not be here, he said, not as a warning, but as a fact. Lily let out a small breath that almost sounded like a laugh. I figured that out already, she said quietly. I was just trying to find somewhere warm for a few minutes. Lucien's expression did not change, but something in his eyes shifted just enough to be noticed. Warmth, he repeated, like the word itself held no meaning. Then after a pause, he made a decision. Lily felt it before he spoke, the way the tension in the air realigned, the way the guards straightened slightly, awaiting instruction. Come with me, he said simply. Lily blinked, caught off guard. What? No, I cannot. She took a small step back. Instinctively, Wax did not move, but his presence anchored her in place more than any physical barrier ever could. I am not going anywhere with you, she added quickly. Lucien tilted his head just slightly, not in confusion, but in assessment, as if recalculating something unseen. You already have, he said, and before she could respond, the faint mark beneath her skin flared, just a fraction brighter, sending a subtle warmth through her veins, not painful, not overwhelming, but undeniable. And for the first time, Lily realized something that made her chest tighten. This was not over, not even close. The warmth did not fade, it lingered beneath her skin, subtle but alive, like something had recognized her before she could recognize herself. Lily's breath slowed, not because she was calm, but because her body did not seem to respond the way it should have. Wax remained at her side, his presence no longer threatening, but something else, something steady, as if he had chosen his place and would not move from it. Lucien watched her closely, not with impatience, not with force, but with a quiet certainty that unsettled her more than anything else. Could you feel it now, he said, and it was not a question. Lily swallowed, trying to ignore the faint pulse beneath her wrist. I feel something, she admitted, but that does not mean I belong anywhere near you. Lucien's expression remained unreadable, but there was a shift in the air around him, like a decision settling into place. Belonging is not something you decide, he said softly. It is something that reveals itself. Lily shook her head, taking another step back, this time forcing her body to move. I do not belong to anything like this. I am not part of your world. The word world felt too small for what stood in front of her, too simple for something that clearly ran deeper than anything she understood. Lucien did not follow her immediately. He let the distance exist, as if measuring how far she could go before something invisible stopped her. You already crossed into it, he replied calmly, and as if the words themselves carried weight, the glow beneath her skin flickered again, stronger this time, not visible to anyone else, but unmistakable to her. It spread, just slightly, like a ripple across still water, and Lily froze mid-step, her breath catching. What is that? She whispered, more to herself than to him. Lucien's eyes lowered to the exact place she had instinctively touched, then lifted again, slower, now more deliberate. Mark, he said, a recognition of authority older than anything this city remembers. Lily let out a short breath that almost sounded like disbelief. Authority? I do not even have a place to sleep tonight, she said quietly, whatever you think I am, it is not that. Nyx shifted again, this time rising to his full height, but still remaining beside her, not between them, not guarding her from Lucien, but aligned with her in a way that felt intentional. His gaze lifted toward Lucien, and for a brief second something passed between them, silent, but understood. Lucien exhaled slowly, then stepped forward, closing the space she had tried to create. Lily did not move this time, not because she could not, but because something in her told her it would not matter. Listen carefully, he said, his voice low but firm. There are rules older than governments, older than laws, older than names people use to make sense of things. You spoke one of them tonight, without training, without permission, without even knowing what it was. Lily's heart pounded against her chest, the sound loud in her ears. Then it was an accident, she said quickly. I did not mean to do anything. Lucien's gaze sharpened. Not accidents, he corrected quietly. Never accidents. Nyx took one slow step forward, then stopped again, as if reinforcing the statement, his presence grounding the moment in something real, something undeniable. Lily looked between them, her mind struggling to keep up with something that felt too large, too sudden. Then tell me what happens now, she said, her voice steadier than she expected. Lucien held her gaze for a long moment, the silence stretching until it felt like the answer itself was being weighed. You come with me, he said again, but this time there was no room for refusal, not in tone, not in presence, not in the way the air itself seemed to settle around that statement. Lily hesitated, the instinct to refuse still there, still strong, but something deeper had already begun to shift. Not trust, not acceptance, something else, something that felt like a door had opened, and she could not pretend it was still closed. And behind her the faint hum of engines returned, low, controlled, precise, vehicles waiting, without drawing attention, without needing to be announced. Lucien extended his hand, not forceful, not demanding, simply there, as if offering a path that had already been chosen. The mark beneath her skin pulsed once more, warm, steady, undeniable, and for the first time Lily realized that whatever she had stepped into tonight, it had been waiting for her long before she ever arrived. Her eyes dropped to his hand, and for a moment the world narrowed down to that single choice, take it or walk away. But something inside her already knew there was no going back, not after the word, not after the way Nyx had knelt, not after the warmth still pulsing quietly beneath her skin. Lily hesitated just long enough to feel the weight of her old life press against her, thin and fragile, a life built on surviving one night at a time, one meal at a time, one step ahead of being invisible again. Then she placed her hand in his. It was colder than she expected, not lifeless, not empty, just different, like touching something that did not belong to time. The contact sent a subtle shock through her fingers, not pain, not fear. Recognition. Lucien's gaze sharpened slightly, as if confirming something only he could see. Then, without another word, he turned, guiding her forward. The vehicles she had barely noticed before now seemed to appear fully from the shadows. Sleek black cars lined the curb, engines running quietly as if they had been waiting long before she arrived. The doors opened in perfect sync, no driver stepping out, no unnecessary movement, just precision. Lily glanced back once at the street. The place she had been moments ago already felt distant, like something she had stepped out of completely. Nyx moved beside her, not behind, not ahead, always aligned, his presence steady as a silent promise or a silent warning. She could not tell which. The interior of the car was warmer than anything she had felt in days, soft leather, subtle lighting, the kind of space that did not need to show wealth because it carried it naturally. Lily sat slowly, her body still unsure how to react to comfort that came without cost. Lucien entered after her, the door closing with a quiet final sound, and as the car began to move, the city outside shifted, lights stretching into long blurred lines as if distance itself was bending. Lily kept her hands in her lap, watching them closely. The faint glow had dimmed again, but it had not disappeared. It waited like something patient. What is going to happen to me, she asked finally, her voice quiet but steady. Lucien did not answer immediately, his gaze directed out the window, as if considering something beyond the streets, beyond the night itself. That depends, he said at last, on what you are. Lily frowned slightly. You keep saying that like I am supposed to know, but I do not. I am just trying to get through the day. That is all I have ever been. Lucien turned his head slowly, his eyes settling on her again, not dismissive, not convinced, just certain. That is what you believed, he corrected softly. Lily felt something tighten in her chest, not fear, not exactly, something closer to uncertainty. Then tell me, she said, her voice stronger now, if you think I am something else, what is it? Lucien studied her for a long moment, then spoke in a tone that felt almost distant, as if recalling something from far away. There are commands that do not belong to language as you understand it, he said. They are older, shaped before words became something humans could own. They do not respond to sound, they respond to authority. Lily listened, her breath slow, her thoughts narrowing. You are saying that word was not just a word, she said. Lucien nodded. Once it was a command, and it was accepted. Nyx shifted slightly at her feet, the movement subtle but deliberate, as if confirming the truth. Without needing to speak, Lily looked down at him, then back at Lucien. But why would it listen to me, she asked. Because that was the part that did not make sense. That was the part that changed everything. Lucien's gaze did not waver. That is what we are going to find out, he said, and as the car turned smoothly onto a long private road, the city lights fading behind them, Lily noticed something ahead, rising from the darkness, a structure vast, silent, and impossibly still, its outline cutting against the night sky, like something that had been there long before the world around it existed. The gates opened without slowing their approach, no guards stepping forward, no voices calling out, just silent recognition, as if the place itself knew who was arriving. Lily's breath caught slightly as they passed through, and the warmth beneath her skin pulsed once more, stronger this time, steady, undeniable, and for the first time she realized she was not just entering a place, she was being recognized by it. The car came to a smooth stop, but Lily did not move right away, her eyes fixed on the structure rising in front of her. It was not just large, it was overwhelming. Tall stone walls stretching upward, at least 50 feet, carved with details too intricate to fully see in the dim light. Windows glowed faintly from within, casting a soft gold against the cold night air. The place did not feel abandoned, it felt aware, like it had been waiting long before she arrived. The door opened without a sound, and the cool air outside brushed against her skin, carrying a faint scent of stone and something older, something she could not name. Lucien stepped out first, then turned slightly, not offering his hand this time, simply waiting. Lily hesitated for a fraction of a second, then stepped out on her own. The ground beneath her feet was smooth, polished stone, not a crack, not a flaw. Everything about this place felt deliberate, controlled. Nyx moved beside her again, his steps silent, his presence constant, as if he had accepted something she still could not understand. They walked forward, the large doors opened before they reached them. No guards, no announcement, just silent recognition, as if the building itself responded to Lucien's presence, and now to hers as well. Inside, the air was warmer, but not soft. It carried a stillness that pressed against her senses. The ceilings stretched high above, at least 30 feet, supported by dark arches that seemed to disappear into shadow. Chandeliers hung like suspended stars there, light reflecting off marble floors so clean they mirrored every step. Lily slowed without meaning to her reflection, looking back at her, smaller than she remembered, thinner, more uncertain compared to everything around her. Lucien did not slow. He moved with quiet certainty, every step measured, every movement precise. People appeared along the sides of the hall, not many, but enough to be noticed, dressed in dark formal clothing, their posture straight, their eyes lowered. They did not speak, they did not question, but Lily felt it, the shift in the air. As they passed, a subtle ripple of awareness. Some of them glanced up just slightly, and when they did, their expressions changed, confusion first, then something sharper, something closer to disbelief. Nyx walking beside her was already enough to draw attention, but it was not him that held their focus, it was her. The faint warmth beneath her skin pulsed again, just once, and Lily instinctively pressed her hand lightly against her wrist, as if she could hide it. Lucien noticed, of course he noticed everything. Do not try to suppress it, he said without turning. Lily lowered her hand slowly. I am not trying to do anything, she replied quietly. I just do not understand why this is happening. Lucien stopped suddenly, the movement so precise it forced her to stop as well. He turned to face her fully now, the distance between them small enough that she could see the faint shift in his eyes, the way the gold darkened slightly, as if reacting to something unseen. Understanding is not required for it to exist, he said calmly. Lily let out a slow breath, her shoulders tightening slightly. Then what is required? She asked. Lucien held her gaze for a moment longer than necessary, then answered, acceptance. Lily shook her head slightly. I cannot accept something I do not even know is real. Lucien's expression did not change, but there was a quiet certainty in his voice when he responded. You commanded Nyx, without hesitation, without training, and without fear. Whether you accept it or not, it is already real. Lily opened her mouth to respond, but the words did not come. Nothing she could say would change what had already happened. Nothing could undo the moment that had brought her here. Lucien turned again and continued forward, and this time she followed without hesitation, not because she agreed, but because something deeper told her. Stopping would not change anything. The hallway opened into a larger chamber, the space expanding outward with tall windows lining the far wall, heavy curtains drawn back just enough to reveal the night beyond. At the center stood a long table, dark polished surface reflecting the low light, and around it several figures already waiting, their presence silent, but unmistakably aware of her arrival. Lily slowed again, her pulse quickening not from fear, but from the realization that whatever answers she thought she might get, they were not going to be simple. Lucien walked past her slightly, then stopped at the head of the table, his position clear, his authority unquestioned. He looked at her once more, then spoke a single sentence that shifted everything again. "They have been waiting for you." Lily's breath caught slightly, her eyes moving toward the figures around the table, and in that moment the warmth beneath her skin flared brighter than before, not painful, not overwhelming, but impossible to ignore. And for the first time she understood something she had not wanted to admit. This was never random, this was not an accident, this was something that had been set in motion long before she ever whispered that word. No one spoke at first, not when she stepped forward, not when the faint echo of her shoes touched the polished floor, not even when Nick settled beside her again, as if he belonged there more than anyone else in the room. The figures around the table remained still, their presence controlled, but heavy, like each of them carried something unseen, something old. Lily felt their attention before she fully met their eyes. One by one, they looked at her, not openly, not boldly, but carefully, as if they were trying to confirm something without being the first to say it. Lucien moved to his place at the head of the table, and the shift was immediate, subtle, but absolute. The room aligned itself around him. "Without question, sit," he said, the word quiet, but carrying enough authority that it felt less like a request and more like a law. Lily hesitated only for a second before moving to the nearest chair, her fingers brushing the smooth edge of the table as she sat, the surface cool beneath her touch, grounding her just enough to keep her steady. Nix remained standing beside her chair, his presence a silent barrier that no one attempted to cross. Lucien rested one hand lightly against the back of his chair, his gaze sweeping across the others before returning to her. "You all felt it," he said simply, not asking, not explaining, stating the truth as if it needed no confirmation. One of the figures across from Lily shifted slightly, a man with silver hair and a sharp expression, his voice low, measured. "We felt something," he said, "but that does not mean what you think it means." Lucien did not react immediately. He allowed the statement to settle, then responded just as calmly. She issued a command, and it was accepted. That is not open to interpretation. A quiet tension spread across the table, not loud, not chaotic, but precise, like a line had been drawn that no one wanted to cross. Lily looked between them, her confusion deepening with every word. "I am right here," she said softly. "You can stop talking like I am not part of this." The man's eyes flicked toward her briefly, assessing, then back to Lucien. "She does not even understand what she has done," he said, "which makes this more concerning, not less." Lucien's gaze sharpened slightly. "Lack of awareness does not negate authority," he replied, the words firm but controlled. Another figure leaned forward slightly, a woman with dark hair, her expression calm, but her eyes calculating. "Authority must come from lineage," she said quietly. "There has been no record, no indication, no signal until now." Lily felt the warmth beneath her skin pulse again, as if reacting to the word lineage. Her fingers tightened slightly against her lap. "I do not have any of that," she said quickly, her voice steady despite the tension. "I do not come from anything important. I barely have records at all." Lucien's attention shifted back to her fully, and for a brief moment something almost unreadable crossed his expression. "Not all records are written," he said. Lily held his gaze, trying to find something solid in the way he spoke, but everything about this felt like standing on ground that moved without warning. "Then explain it," she said, her voice stronger now. "If this is not random, if this is not a mistake, then tell me what it is." Lucien was silent for a moment, not avoiding the question, but weighing it. Then he spoke slowly, each word deliberate. "There are structures older than memory systems that existed before names, before titles, before anything you would recognize as history." He said they were built on recognition, not creation, on what something is rather than what it claims to be. Lily listened, her breath steady, but her mind racing, trying to hold on to something that made sense. "You were saying this place recognized me?" she asked. Lucien did not look away. "Yes," he said simply. The woman across the table frowned slightly. "That is not possible," she said. Quietly, recognition at that level has not occurred in centuries. Lucian's gaze did not shift. Then perhaps it was overdue, he replied. The room fell silent again, heavier this time, the kind of silence that meant something had changed, even if no one had said it directly. Lily felt it in the way the air settled, in the way the warmth beneath her skin no longer flickered, but held steady, like something had stabilized inside her. She exhaled slowly, then asked the question that had been building since the moment she arrived. What happens now? Lucian looked at her, not cold, not distant, but certain. Now, we find out why you were recognized, he said, and as the words settled into the room, the faint lights above flickered just slightly, not enough to fail, but enough to shift the atmosphere, just enough for Lily to realize that whatever answer they were about to uncover, it was not going to stay contained within this room. The silence did not break, it tightened, stretching across the room like something unseen was listening, waiting, measuring. Lily felt it first, not through sound, but through the steady warmth beneath her skin, shifting again, not stronger, not weaker, just different, as if it had turned its attention outward instead of inward. Her fingers pressed lightly against the edge of the table, grounding herself in something solid as her eyes moved from one face to another. None of them looked away now, not like before when they tried to observe without being seen. Now, they watched her directly, openly. And that change unsettled her more than anything else. Lucian noticed it, of course. He always noticed everything. His gaze moved briefly toward the others, then back to her, as if recalibrating the entire room around what had just shifted. You feel that, he said quietly. Lily nodded. Before she could stop herself, yes, she admitted, it is not the same as before. One of the figures leaned forward slightly, the silver-haired man again, his voice lower, now more focused. Then it is responding, he said, not to Lucian, but to the moment itself. Lucian did not look at him, but his response was immediate. It was always responding. The difference is that now she is aware of it. Lily's breath slowed, her thoughts narrowing around that word. Aware. I do not know how to control it, she said, and for the first time, there was something closer to uncertainty in her voice, not fear, but the realization that whatever this was, it was not something she could ignore. Lucian stepped away from his position at the head of the table, not rushed, not abrupt, just enough movement to draw every eye again. He walked slowly along the length of the table, then stopped beside her, his presence closer, now more defined, not overwhelming, but impossible to dismiss. You are not meant to control it, he said. Lily turned her head slightly to look at him. Then what am I supposed to do with it? She asked. Lucian's gaze lowered briefly to her hand resting on the table, then back to her face. You are meant to understand it, he replied. The distinction settled between them, subtle but significant. The woman across the table spoke again, her tone measured, but edged with something sharper. Understanding requires context, she said, and she has none. Lucian's expression did not change. Then we provide it, he answered simply. Lily exhaled slowly, trying to keep pace with the conversation that seemed to move faster than her thoughts. Then start with something simple, she said, her voice steadier now. You said I issued a command, but I did not know what I was saying. So what exactly did I say? Lucian held her gaze for a moment, then spoke the word again, but this time it sounded different, not louder, not harsher, but layered, as if it carried something beneath the surface, something that resonated in a way she could feel rather than hear. Stay. The moment the word left his mouth, the air shifted again, not dramatically, not visibly, but enough for Lily to feel the response beneath her skin, a pulse, not her heartbeat. Something separate, something aligned with the sound. Nix lifted his head instantly, his posture adjusting, not out of instinct, but recognition. His eyes moved toward Lucian, then back to Lily, as if comparing something unseen. Lily's breath caught slightly. That is the same word, she said, but it does not sound the same. Lucian nodded once, because you heard it as language, he said, but it was never just that. Lily's mind raced, trying to grasp something that refused to fit into anything familiar. Then what is it, she asked. Lucian's gaze did not waver. It is authority given form, he said. The room fell quiet again, but this time it was different, not uncertain, not questioning, but focused. Every person at that table understood the weight of what had just been said, even if Lily did not fully grasp it. Yet the silver-haired man spoke again, slower, now more careful. If that is true, then the question is not whether she can use it, he said, it is whether she should. Lucian turned his head slightly, just enough to acknowledge the statement without fully engaging, and that is not your decision to make, he replied calmly. The tension rose again, subtle but undeniable lines forming that had not existed before. Lily felt it clearly now, the way the room divided, not openly, not physically, but an intense some of them were not just observing, they were assessing her as a risk, as something that could shift whatever balance existed here. She swallowed, then spoke before the silence could stretch further. I am not trying to be a threat, she said, her voice firm despite everything I did. Not ask for any of this. Lucien looked at her again, and for the first time, there was something almost quiet in his expression, not soft, not warm, but understanding. Then perhaps that is exactly why you were chosen, he said. Lily frowned slightly. Chosen? She repeated the word, unfamiliar in this context, unsettling in a way she could not fully explain. Lucien held her gaze for a moment longer, then spoke one final sentence that settled heavily into the room. The system does not choose what is convenient, he said, it chooses what is necessary. And as the words lingered, the faint lights above dimmed just slightly again, not failing, not breaking, but reacting. And Lily felt the warmth beneath her skin respond in perfect rhythm, as if something far beyond this room had just acknowledged her presence. The word chosen did not leave her mind. It stayed there, echoing, not loud, not overwhelming, but constant, like something had settled into place that could not be undone. Lily felt it again beneath her skin, not just warmth now, but rhythm, steady, deliberate, matching something beyond her own pulse. She drew in a slow breath, trying to focus, trying to ground herself in something familiar, but nothing in this room followed rules. She understood. Lucien remained beside her, not touching, not directing, but present in a way that made everything feel more defined. The others at the table did not speak immediately, but their silence was no longer passive. It was active, measured, like they were waiting for something specific to happen. And then it did. One of the chandeliers above flickered again, this time slightly longer, the light dimming for just a fraction of a second before stabilizing. Lily's head tilted upward instinctively, her eyes tracking the movement, then back down to her hands, where the faint glow responded again, stronger than before, not visible to the others perhaps, but undeniable to her. It pulsed once, twice, then settled into a steady, quiet presence. The woman across the table leaned forward again, her voice calm, but no longer neutral. It is accelerating, she said. Lucien did not look at her. What is accelerating? He asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the response. She answered, not taking her eyes off Lily. The system is not just recognizing her, it is adjusting to her. Lily's chest tightened slightly at the words adjusting, like she was something that needed to be accounted for, something that changed the structure simply by existing. I am not doing anything, she said quietly, almost defensively, but the silver-haired man shook his head. Slightly. That may be true, he said, but it does not mean nothing is happening. Lucien stepped slightly closer, now not enough to crowd her, but enough that his presence cut through the growing tension. Lily looked up at him, then at the others. Then tell me what it wants, she said, because that was the part that mattered, not what they thought, not what they feared, but what this thing, whatever it was, expected from her. Lucien held her gaze, his expression steady but focused. That is not something it tells, he said. It is something it reveals. Lily frowned slightly. That does not help. Lucien almost smiled, not fully, not openly, just a subtle shift that disappeared as quickly as it came. It is not meant to be easy, he replied. Nix moved again beside her, not restless, not uncertain, just adjusting his position slightly closer, his head lowering near her shoulder, his presence no longer just aligned, but protective in a way that made several people at the table exchange brief glances. Lily noticed that too, the way their reactions shifted, the way their attention sharpened, not just on her, but on the connection forming around her. Why is he doing that, she asked softly. Lucien's eyes flicked briefly to Nix, then back to her. Because he recognizes what you are before you do. Lily's breath caught slightly at that, the statement landing heavier than anything else so far. Recognizes what I am, she repeated quietly. Lucien nodded once. Yes. The woman across the table spoke again, her tone more urgent now. Recognition at that level does not happen without consequence, she said. If the system is stabilizing around her, then it means something is coming. The room went still again, not confused, not uncertain this time, but aware of something beyond the immediate moment. Lily felt it too, not as fear, but as anticipation, like standing at the edge of something just out of view. Then what is coming, she asked. Lucien did not answer right away, his gaze shifting briefly toward the far end of the room, where the tall windows stood, the night beyond them darker, now deeper, as if the world outside had changed in ways she could not yet see. When a system activates, he said slowly, it does not do so in isolation, it triggers responses across every connected structure. Lily followed his gaze toward the windows, her chest tightening slightly. You mean others will know? He did not look back at her immediately. Yes, he said simply, And they will not all respond the same way. The implication settled heavily into the room. Not everyone would see her as something to understand. Some would see her as something to control, something to contain, something to remove. Lily's fingers tightened slightly against her lap, the warmth beneath her skin responding again, not flickering, not unstable, but stronger, steady, like it was preparing for something, even if she was not. Lucien turned back to her fully, his voice lower, now more direct. You need to be ready, he said. Lily held his gaze, her heartbeat quickening. Ready for what she asked? Lucien did not hesitate. For what comes next, he said, and as if the words themselves carried weight, the lights dimmed once more, just briefly, and somewhere deep within the structure a low, distant resonance echoed, not loud, not threatening, but unmistakable. Like something vast had just awakened, and for the first time Lily understood this was not just about being recognized, it was about being found. The resonance did not fade, it lingered low and steady beneath everything, like a second heartbeat, threaded through the walls, through the floor, through the air itself. Lily felt it align with the warmth inside her, not matching it, not mirroring it, but recognizing it. Her breath slowed, not because she was calm, but because something deeper had taken control of the rhythm. Nix lifted his head again, his posture shifting subtly, not tense, not alert, just aware in a way that felt deliberate. The others at the table felt it too. That much was clear. Their stillness sharpened their attention, narrowing not toward each other, but toward her. Lucien did not move immediately. He stood beside her, his presence steady, as if anchoring the moment, allowing whatever was unfolding to reveal itself fully without interruption. Lily swallowed her gaze, drifting toward the tall windows at the far end of the room. The darkness beyond them no longer felt empty, it felt occupied, not by something visible, not by anything she could name, but by the sense that distance no longer meant separation, that whatever had awakened had already begun to close the space between here and elsewhere. They can feel this, she said, quietly, not asking, but realizing. Lucien answered without hesitation, yes. Lily's fingers tightened slightly against her lap. Then they know about me, she continued, her voice steady despite the weight of the thought. Lucien's gaze shifted toward her again, not cold, not distant, but certain. They know something has changed, he said. Whether they understand it yet is a different question. The silver-haired man leaned back slightly, his expression more guarded than before. Understanding will not matter, he said quietly. Reaction will, and reactions are rarely patient. The woman across from him nodded, once her eyes still fixed on Lily. The longer she remains undefined, the more unstable this becomes, she added. Lily exhaled slowly, her chest tightening, not from fear, but from the growing realization that this was no longer contained to this room, this place, this moment. It was moving outward, already expanding into something she could not stop then define it, she said, her voice stronger, now cutting through the tension. Tell me what I am supposed to be. Lucien turned to face her fully, now his attention no longer divided, his presence focused entirely on her, as if everything else in the room had become secondary. That is not something I assign, he said, it is something you claim. Lily frowned slightly. That sounds like a choice. Lucien held her gaze. It is. Lily felt the weight of that settle differently than everything else. This was not just something happening to her, this was something that would require her to step into it or step away. And for the first time since this began, she realized there was still a decision to be made, not about whether it was real, but about what she would do with it. The warmth beneath her skin pulsed again, stronger, now steady, unwavering, as if waiting for that answer. Nix moved closer, his shoulder brushing lightly against her leg, grounding her in something tangible, something present. Lily closed her eyes for just a second, not long enough to escape, only long enough to listen to that rhythm, to the quiet certainty forming beneath the confusion, beneath the uncertainty, beneath the life she had been living until tonight. When she opened them again, something had shifted, not dramatically, not visibly, but enough. Lucien saw it immediately, his gaze sharpening. Just slightly. Speak, he said, not commanding, not forcing, but inviting something deeper. Lily drew in a slow breath, her voice quiet but clear. I do not understand any of this, she said. I do not know where it came from or why it chose me, but I am not going to pretend it did not happen. The room remained silent, every word settling into place. Then I will find out what it is, she continued. And if it is something that changes things, then I will not run from it. The warmth beneath her skin responded instantly, not flaring, not overwhelming, but stabilizing into something calm, something controlled, as if it had been waiting for that moment. Lucien watched her closely, then nodded once, not approval, not relief, recognition. Then it begins, he said. The low resonance beneath the structure shifted slightly deeper, now more defined like a distant signal locking into place, and far beyond the walls, far beyond the city, something responded, not visible, not immediate, but certain Lily felt it not as fear, but as awareness, the understanding that whatever had started here was no longer contained, and as she stood there no longer, just reacting, no longer, just trying to understand, she realized something else. This was never about surviving the night. This was about stepping into something that had been waiting long before she ever whispered that word.